Hey Internet, Elliot with Unlock Audio here, and today we're going to be looking at some of the music I wrote, composed, and produced for the VR game Furious Seas. Now, when I was first talking to the team, they had very specific moments that they wanted custom music for, and they also wanted it to have a very holistic feel and communicate the idea of this world that they were trying to create. So I'm going to go into a bit of the theory and harmony behind it. I'm going to go into some of the sequencing in terms of when this music was used, and then we can see how all these pieces of music relate and why the sequence of them and where they were used in the game was really paramount to them actually being successful. So let's go ahead and check out the opening and very beginning of the game.
They took everything. My ship, my money, even my dead father's ring. Pillaged by the pirate league called the Crimson Bandits. Just to add to their ungodly hoard of treasure, the Crimson Pile. I had ignored them for far too long. No longer. I'm gonna hunt them all down. One by one. From that singing flunky Tails Avery to their insane leader, Captain Ruin. I've got nothing left to lose. And they have so much I can take.
Okay, so there's the opening to the game Furious Seas, and you'll notice at the very beginning we get a little bit of backstory about how they took everything from him, and it becomes apparent that this is kind of a revenge story. So a big important part of this moment was to set a mood. It needs to feel like pirates. It also needs to feel kind of sad and depressing in a way, but then build to something else. So we've got the session open here, and I'm going to quickly deconstruct this thing and talk about how it relates to the other two important moments that we're going to talk about in terms of music for the game in this video. So it starts off with some cello drones here, just to give a very ominous sort of feel, and then eventually we add a few more layers of drones, and then also I played my violin and recorded it here for that main melodic theme that we hear that comes back at a couple other moments as well, even outside of this piece of music. So it starts off really low, slowly comes in. We have a kora playing some notes right here, and you'll hear we get some more layers coming in. And now here's the violin that I'm playing with that main melodic theme. And these layers stay pretty consistent. You'll see we've added a little bit of a bass drum there to give kind of a sense of ominous. I thought of it as sort of walking the plank sort of feel with it. But that's how the beginning of it feels. And then we have a short interlude in between these two sections. And to let that kind of marinate a little bit while you're looking at the world too, and then things finally come in full. So I've talked about the beginning. The way that this differs between these two sections, it's a repeat of the same exact thing. I'm even using the same recording of violin, but I'm layering it and filling it out much fuller in terms of its arrangement and orchestration. So I've got myself still playing the live violin, but I'm layering that with some libraries of violin sections, so you get that very lyrical, dynamic quality from the live performance, because using sample libraries is just never going to quite replicate that. But combining sample libraries along with a live performance can give you much more of that lyrical quality while still helping you fill out a mix and make it seem like it's larger than just you playing by yourself in a room. Then I've also filled everything out, adding an entire string section. So here I've got a violin solo section doubling my performance up top here, but then I'm filling out these chords with an entire string section here. And so let's just listen to what's going on underneath that main theme. So this is essentially block chords moving around, and I'm kind of doubling that with the brass as well. So this actually has the entire triad, or basically all the notes of a 3-note chord that we typically use in Western harmony here in its part. So it's essentially doubling the same chords that this string section is putting together there. But when you combine that, it just seems really, really full, and the brass gives it a sort of regal quality to it as well. I've also got this recorder that is doubling the main melodic part. Just to give it even more of a kind of jaunty pirate feel. And then I've added some timpani that's actually tuned to all of the chords that we're using in these harmonies that I have up top as well. Timpanis are very large drums, so it can be an issue if you only have so much space on stage or in a recording space to actually fit all the drums in. With the computer, you don't necessarily have that problem. So these are all tuned to the root of all the chords that we're using. And then I've got some cymbals there just to give emphasis and help with that forward motion at the turning of some phrases. So that's how this is. Oh, you know what? Before we move on, I do also want to talk about, for all of the music theory, harmony people out there, the progression that I'm using here. So it's starting in G minor, and then we go to the minor 5, which is, I think, just one harmonic change that's just not used enough. I love going from a minor 1 to a minor 5. Major 5 is usually the go-to if you're going to use the 5 at all, but I like the minor 5. Anyways, and here we're doing G minor to D minor, back to G minor, then D major, right? So we've got some modal modulation in there. Then we do actually go back to the dominant. Then we go to B flat major, so the major 3 of the G minor scale, then D major, E flat major, going to the diminished 6, and then back to G minor, and then repeating that, G minor, D minor, G minor, D major, and G minor again. So it gives a very satisfying ending. So it's not particularly complicated, but it's a little more complicated than just using all of the chords that are generally found in that key. All right, so now that you've got this in your ear, I am going to play you a bit of a trailer that was used to advertise the game, because now the important thing is that we have this created. It's now about interpreting it in other ways and tying all of these different pieces together so it feels like a holistic identity together. So let's take a look/listen to that now.
They took everything. The Crimson Bandits. My ship, my money, even my dead father's ring. I'm gonna hunt them down, one by one.
There's the bastard that attacked my...
All right, so there's the trailer, and you can probably hear a lot of the ways in which these two relate, or how we got this piece from the narrative one that we just looked at. It's the same chord structure. It's, for the most part, the same instrumentation. We're really just changing up the tempo and general energy within it. Case in point, we've got a little intro here at the very beginning to kind of get the listener in the mood for the type of experience and energy that they're about to have. There's a timpani roll right there that leads into it. And it finally comes into our main melody. So there, we've got our main melody. We've added a lot of very energetic drums, and instead of just having chords ringing out the whole time, you can hear that the string section is still hitting the same chords, but it's very quick staccato and spiccato notes. And when this repeats, a lot of the strings do the same thing again, but then we also add some sustain held notes with additional strings back here, which you don't hear too much. It's more of a mix thing than a real composition thing to have that there. But then we do have the brass holding out these notes very strongly. We're still layering a live performance of violin along with a sample library. So you hear a little bit of that imperfection and the difference in the kind of breathing quality of the live violin as opposed to the library. And then for this last section here, we take a lot of these ideas that are going on and kind of combine them. So here the brass takes over, and it's a modified version of the melody, and we've still got a lot of the same parts repeating themselves here in the violins. Harmonically it's the same, but we're adding a bit of rhythmic variation there. So if you'll notice here in violin and viola, it's following a lot of the same rhythms that we have in this intro version to kind of tie all of that together. So let's listen to that section. Whoops, here we go. So if we listen to the violins on their own. So now we're taking the harmony that's happening here, we're layering it with kind of the rhythm that's here, and then we're slightly changing up the melody. But you can directly hear how we get from our narrative version to this more action-oriented version. And then there's also another version of this, or of the music that I want to talk about, and it's the kind of threatened version of the music. Here, let me bring it up here and bring it down here. Okay, so, all right. So now let's listen to this threatened version of it. So it's still action-oriented, but it's during the action portion, we're not necessarily worried about what's going to happen. But with this threatened version, there's that sense of danger and threat, and we don't. It's not necessarily happy and without fraud here. It's just that very ominous, threatening texture with it. Now, hearing this directly after our action theme, we can hear how those relate, right? We've got drums, we've got that same 3 feel. It still actually has a fair amount of pickup and weight to it and energy. But what I'm trying to get at here is that this all feels like it fits together because we followed the progression that we did. If I was to play our original narrative version of this, it's a lot harder to see how the narrative version relates to this threatened version. Right, so this is what we had at the beginning of the game. Contrasting that to the threatened version. You'll see that it's not as much of a direct tie. So this music was written with the progression of what the gameplay experience is going to be, and with that in mind, we took certain elements from the preceding piece of music, warped them, and made it appropriate for the moment that we were currently looking at in terms of the narrative and in terms of the gameplay. And to skip around that and to not go in that order, it doesn't make it seem as holistic and fluid, which is a really important part of having a successful sonic landscape for your game and just a general audio identity. I hope this video was helpful for those that are interested in game music and game audio, and even some music theory folks out there. Didn't get into the production side of things, maybe that'll be a video in the future, but this is how we were thinking about approaching different pieces of music, making it holistic and making it appropriate for Furious Seas. If you would like to get more information on game audio implementation, music composition, production, sound design, all that cool game audio stuff, please hit subscribe. Leave a comment if you have a question. I'd be happy to answer. And thanks so much for watching.